Alright, so the car is still misfiring. I changed spark plugs 1, 2, and 3. I checked the coil packs. I attempted to check the injectors, but of course the plenum kind of covers the injectors, so I can't really do that. What happens is that it misfires when the engine's warm and you kind of get on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the intake manifold off. I'm going to take the lower intake manifold off. That gets me to the knock sensor because that's the code I'm getting, P0327, meaning my knock sensor or the sub harness, something is wrong with it. I'm going to replace those, and I'm going to check the injectors. I'm going to check all the spark plugs and change all of them, check all the coil packs, everything while I have it torn apart, because it's going to give me easier access to everything, and I'm crossing my fingers that helps. So we're going to start. Basically the first thing we need to do is take off the intake, take off the throttle body, disconnect all your vacuum hoses, and then we can start taking the plenum off. I have the FSM that I'm following for this to make sure I do everything step by step and I do it right. So first, to take the intake off, that means I need to take or disconnect the MAF. We need to disconnect the throttle body. Then you have a few vacuum hoses here, the PCV hose here. You have a coolant hose here that either you need to drain the coolant for or cap it off. And then there's a vacuum hose underneath the throttle body. And there's a vacuum hose back here. The FSM says to actually disconnect the throttle body. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm not sure if we're going to do that. There's also a few things you need to disconnect, like the wiring harness right here. This, I think that's fuel, hooks onto the lower manifold right down there. Hopefully you can see that. And then this, which is some vacuum solenoid, maybe EGR, I'm not sure what this is. That needs to be disconnected. And then we can take all these bolts off. Everything should be disconnected from the intake. So now I'm going to loosen the bolts. There's a certain order you have to do it. I can put it over the screen now. It's from the FSM that I found. That's what I'm following along with. So we'll disconnect this, take the upper plenum off. Look how dirty and oily this is. Like, that's crazy. I guess I'm getting a lot of blow-by or something. Maybe that means I need to install a catch can? I'm not sure. That looks gross. Sorry about the shadows. Next step, you have 6 bolts right here. There's a certain order to remove them. See this? I'm gonna remove that, and that should take this lower part of the plenum off. Looks like there's also a bolt here. Wonder if there's some others around the outside. Yeah, it looks like there's 6 here, 1 here, and 1 right back there. So we'll take that off and we should have the lower plenum off. Make sure to disconnect everything, like the wiring harness, from the outside also. Alright, so now we're just down to the lower intake manifold. You can see that the first 4 cylinders are okay. I don't know why the last 2 are so oily. I don't know, I'll have to look into that a little bit. I don't know what that means, so I'm probably just gonna Google it and try and figure it out. But now I have access to the fuel rails, and I have easier access to the coil packs on both sides, which means I can check these coil packs and change the spark plugs over here, and I can check these fuel rails. Of course, I left my multimeter at home, and I'm at a friend's house, not home right now, so that's probably gonna have to be tomorrow. But I can still take off the fuel rails and take off this intake manifold. Alright, so I'm changing the spark plugs. All you do is I loosen this, get a 10 mil, take off this one bolt holding the coil pack, take off the clip for the coil pack, and then pull straight up. That's it. Then you have your spark plug down in there. Takes a 5/8 spark plug socket. Inspect and see if you have any oil down there, which doesn't look like I do. I can see that there's RTV used on my valve covers, so I think that means that the guy that had it before me, or whoever had it before him, replaced the valve covers and everything. So hopefully we won't have to worry about that. And it doesn't take much force to break the spark plugs loose. And that's it. Alright, so now I'm going to get the other two spark plugs out so we can compare them all. It's really easy to mix up these wires that clip into the coil packs, because the wire for 1 and 4, or sorry, 2 and 6 come off at pretty much the same place. So just be aware of what you're doing. So here's all 3 spark plugs. I hope you can see what I'm trying to show you. All 3 look about the same. This is 2, 4, 6 from left to right. They all look about the same. They don't look too bad, but I don't know how old they are, so I'm just going to replace them anyways. Okay, so we got the upper and middle, or the upper and lower plenum, I guess. I don't know what you call it. The full upper intake manifold off. We have to get the lower intake manifold off. That means we have to take the fuel rails out. The fuel rails should just lift right out. It might take a little bit of pressure, but they should basically just lift out. Just kidding. You have to undo some bolts first. Then the fuel rails will come out. So be careful when you're taking out the fuel rails, because under each bolt there's a little black spacer, and I didn't realize that, and I don't know where this last one went. But now you just have 2, 4, 6, 8 bolts, 4 on each side down here, and there's a certain order to undo them in. See the overlay, and so you take that off, and this lower manifold should just come right off. Alright, so there it is flipped back. All of that work was for that thing right there. Right in the middle that's not focusing on. You see, that's the knock sensor, and it has a wiring harness coming off that goes to the back of the engine. That's what all this was for. Now we just gotta reassemble. I don't have the knock sensor sub harness yet though. It's not coming until Monday. Nissan doesn't actually sell a sub harness. You have to get it from other sources. I got mine from Z1, but it's not gonna be here until Monday. So I'm gonna put the knock sensor on. I'm gonna go stop at O'Reilly's and get the whole gasket set. It's like 45 bucks, 49 bucks at O'Reilly's for all of the gaskets you need for this job. So might as well just get that. So I'm gonna stop there later today, and then I'll be back on Monday to finish this up and reassemble everything, and we'll cross our fingers that it works. Alright, it's 2 days later. I went to the junkyard yesterday. I got a lot of parts. Today I'm just waiting for the knock sensor harness to come in. That's gonna come in later. So until then I'm gonna replace one injector where the clip broke, and I need to clean up all the gasket surfaces. I think that's all I gotta do right now until that harness comes in there. Then I can just put everything back together and it should be pretty easy. So now I gotta change this injector, because if you look at this, the O-ring's falling off against this brown clip. This fell off. So I picked up another one at the junkyard. The bad thing is that I didn't clear my fuel rail before I started this, so fuel's gonna pour out. Let's just do this. So it's a super easy task. All I gotta do is take this clip off on top. It just spreads and then you pull it off. Get my other injector first. I'm gonna test the resistance because the two that I got were a little bit different on the resistance. I think one is closer than the other. So this one's 14.9 ohms. The other one I picked up is 14.8. So that very closely matches. So I'm gonna pull this off, which is just an O-ring up at the top. Hope it doesn't pour out too much fuel, and then get the other one on. Not much coming out. Line it up. Put the clip back on. That's it. All right, so here's what I've been struggling with. I need to replace the knock sensor harness, which under all this stuff, it's right here, and it comes from under here. If I moved this intake, you would see it easily, but just trust me that on the passenger side behind the valve cover, it's way down here, and then it dips behind everything. So there's this huge harness back here in the back that has a mounting bracket right here. I had to remove that so I could lift this up out of the way and basically stick my hand all the way down here past behind the valve cover. I don't even know if you can see my hand down there, but you can see that the harness right there in the middle dips between, I think this is coolant stuff, and it gets way down there, way down in that hole. So you gotta finagle your hand down there, and I'm hopefully gonna be able to get this off. The only way that you can actually see it is if you come up under here and the pink zip tie is on it. So it's the one above the O2 sensor. I got it unclipped, and now I just gotta see what's holding it on so I can actually take it out. You can see those two clips right, the two plugs right there. Sorry the camera's turned, it's the only way I can fit it in here. Those plugs are unclipped, and that's where it is. I don't know if I can stick my hand up from the bottom though, so this is just me scouting it out. I ended up just pulling it from the end that's under the intake. You can see I just snapped it off. The clip that's under that coolant tube, it's on there really well. My hand's too big to fit down there to take off the bolt, take it off the mounting bracket or whatever it is. So I just ripped it off, and I'm just gonna leave it, it's fine. I have my new harness coming. Where this clipped into, I kind of pulled it up so it's more easily accessible, and I can actually visually see it from up top. So it'll be a lot easier to put the harness on. Alright, it's super cold out here, so please excuse this. First step of putting everything back together, just put the two gaskets down that go between the heads and the lower intake manifold, and put all the nuts and bolts in. Don't tighten them yet, just put them so that they're on. Okay, so according to the FSM, the torque specs are 4 to 7 foot-pounds on the first go around, and then 20 to 23 foot-pounds on the second go around. You can either do that in foot-pounds, you can convert it to inch-pounds, it doesn't matter, just make sure you go in the correct order. The next step is to put the fuel rails down. Put a little oil in the O-rings, just set them down, and they should go right in. You want to make sure that you're tightening these evenly also. The bolts for the fuel rail are 7 foot-pounds and 17 foot-pounds. Do it evenly across. Alright, so the lower part of the plenum is on. I got the lower intake manifold installed. torqued down, everything like that. This lower part of the plenum is down now. I have the gasket on. I have this, whatever this is, down there too. Alright, then you put the upper plenum on. Be careful about this oil filler rubber part, because it really likes to get caught in there. Now there's an order for this again. Look at your FSM. Okay, so now that we got all the intakes on, it's all about just connecting the hoses, the wires, the intake, meaning the filter, and everything else like that. Easier stuff now. Alright, everything should be back together in the engine. I gotta tighten down that one thing. But everything should be back together. All the sensors should be plugged in. Keyword should be. So we'll tighten this down, plug in the battery, and we'll see if it starts up. I don't hear any hissing. Alright, now let's plug in the OBD2 reader and see if it shows anything. Let it warm up for a bit too though. No pending fault codes, probably because it's been running for about a minute. The true test will be after it warms up and I go drive it. So I'm just gonna let it sit here and idle until it warms up. All right, let's go drive it. It's all back together. I want to be excited, but I'm skeptical because everything I read online tells me to be skeptical. We're about up to temp. So if it's gonna do anything, it should start soon. So it was misfiring basically when I would be kind of low in the RPMs. So I'm like not in the power band and I just slam it. And then it misfire that way. So we're just gonna keep driving around, flooring it from 2000 RPMs and see if that does it, because that's when it's been doing it. And everything feels good so far. I like this. Alright, so I'm satisfied, at least for now. Alright, so let's go over everything I did. I changed the knock sensor, I changed the knock sensor sub harness, I changed my other 3 spark plugs. I had changed 3 before. I changed the other 3 spark plugs. I changed a coil pack that when I pulled out, it wouldn't go back in right. I changed 1 injector that when I pulled out, a clip broke. And then I just kind of tried to clean everything up. The code that I was getting was P0327, which was knock sensor, low voltage. If you look online, oh my God, it's endless. People say that the knock sensors on these cars don't really go bad, that it was on the previous, you know, Maximas and things prior to the Z. And they say, you know, check your coils, check your spark plugs, and check, make sure your valve covers are okay, make sure you don't have any leaks in your intake, make sure your cats aren't clogged, this, that, and there's just a whole list of things. Oh, I also changed the PCV valve. So there's a whole list of things to run through. I tried to run through everything I possibly could before taking it apart, but you can only really reach the injectors if you take the plenum off. You can do the whole long screwdriver as a stethoscope thing and see if the injectors are ticking, but you can't really get the resistance through them, which is how I would preferably check them. So I did all that. I checked all the coils, all the spark plugs, made sure there was no oil in the spark plug tubes. I made sure there was no leaks. I checked the injectors to make sure they were all good. I did everything. The only things I actually replaced this time were the 3 spark plugs, the knock sensor sub harness, and the PCV valve. I just drove it. I've been at operating temperature the whole time driving it, and I drove it exactly how I would before when it would misfire, and it hasn't misfired. So I'm hoping we're okay. This is gonna take a little bit more driving around to see, but I'm not gonna do that right this second. I'm at a friend's house, so I need to clean up all my stuff. I also need to adjust my coilovers and make sure I'm at the right height I want, and that's what I'm gonna do first. So once I get all this stuff done, I'll go drive it some more. If there's no update after this, that means that I haven't had a misfire yet. If there's an update after this, well then you'll see what it is. I hope this was useful. I hope this kind of showed you how to really tear down the engine and get to that stupid knock sensor. Stay tuned for more. There's definitely gonna be more. I have a big present coming for my car soon. We're just waiting for everything to be delivered. So stay tuned.